तेजेंद्र जी नमस्कार, मेरी आवाज आ रही है वहां पर? तेजेंद्र, आप अपने आप को अनम्यूट करिए तेजेंद्र सर।
Good morning, sir. Yes, I can hear you.
ओके ओके, थैंक यू सो मच तेजेंद्र सर, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। अब हमारे साथ जो आज के चीफ गेस्ट हैं, मुख्य अतिथि हैं, डॉक्टर हिमांशु दास सर, वह जुड़ चुके हैं। आप डायरेक्टर नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ विजुअली हैंडीकैप्ड NIVH देहरादून में संप्रति हैं। सत्र को मॉडरेट करने के लिए जो आज के सत्र की समीक्षा कर रही हैं और जो मॉडरेट कर रहे हैं, उन दोनों का मैं आह्वान करता हूं। डॉक्टर अनीता देवी और मिस शेफाली, आप दोनों का स्वागत है। आप दोनों सत्र को आगे बढ़ाएं। ओवर टू यू डॉक्टर अनीता देवी।
He's not only our guest, he's our host also, because this conference belongs to him equally, the way it belongs to sir. Now I request Anita to continue with the session.
धन्यवाद। नमस्कार सभी को। WDC 1 के आज तीसरे दिन और 7वें तकनीकी सत्र में आप सभी का मैत्री परिवार की ओर से स्वागत है, अभिनंदन है। हमारे लिए बड़े हर्ष और गर्व की बात है कि इस सत्र के अध्यक्ष डॉक्टर हिमांशु दास जी हैं। सर हमारे साथ जुड़ चुके हैं, इसलिए मैं डॉक्टर सविता पाठक से अनुरोध करती हूँ कि वो सर का परिचय दें और हम सबसे परिचित कराएं।
धन्यवाद अनीता जी। Now, good morning to everyone. Our distinguished guest for the day is Dr. Himanshu Das. Dr. Das holds a PhD in special education and master's in special education, psychology, social work, education, and English. Currently, he is the director of National Institute of Empowerment of Persons with Visual Disabilities, Dehradun, Chief Coordinator, National Early Intervention and Preschool Project, and the Chairperson, National Mental Health Rehabilitation Helpline. Dr. Das is a former director of National Institute for Environment of Persons with Multiple Disabilities, Chennai, and former director in charge of National Institute for Empowerment of Persons with Intellectual Disabilities, Secunderabad, under Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. He was also a visiting faculty at Roehampton University, London, UK, and Charles University, Prague, Czech Republic. He brings with him over 23 years of extensive experience in the field of disability rehabilitation, from clinical, administrative, policy, schemes, community, research, publication, and academic perspective. We welcome you, sir. May I request you to please say a few words and address the gathering. Thank you.
Ma'am, I was told I'll take about maybe 25 minutes, ma'am, if that is okay.
Yes, sir.
Namaskar ji. My salutations to the Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, Principal of Maitri College, Dr. Anita Devi ji, Dr. Sefali ji, and my very beloved and mentoring kind of a partner for this program, Dr. Smriti ji. The title that you have chosen and the endeavor that this college is taking, which is an annual plan of action for raising awareness and capacity building in the field of disability rehabilitation, speaks volume of the overall attitude of Delhi University, and especially this college and the team of faculty of this college. Contemporary interventions in disability discourse, I think this is something which has become such a huge topic in India when we talk of different domains of disability, that it perhaps needs to be addressed every month, and maybe in time to come we have to go disability specific, or we have to go age specific, or maybe we have to go service specific, but it has become such a huge domain today. I was assigned to discuss on struggle in special need families, or family struggle. I would put it up as the most important of all topics that can touch lives of persons with special need, because that is the core, and if the core is not handled rightly, everything else can go wrong. That is what we are seeing in this whole country. Don't take my words wrongly. In my personal life, I have come across thousands of parents of different disabilities. It is not pertaining to a specific disability, that parents want their children to be in some kind of a hostel, and preferably lifelong. Similarly, I have met a lot of adolescent and young adults with disabilities who would prefer to stay in hostels. This itself is an indication of somewhere down the line, the whole cycle of rehabilitation, family empowerment going wrong. Today, we'll try to dig into this particular aspects of human life, where the affected individual and the family who was responsible for caring for this affected individual both have got into a cycle of surrendering each other and looking at somebody else for services. What it is that is going wrong inside the whole story of family struggle. So I have found a lot of professionals blaming parents for this, and I have found a lot of colleagues blaming persons with special need for this, for having such an attitude of being in a hostel, or leaving the child at somebody else's disposal for care and rehabilitation or education, whatever it is. So when you go to try dig into, then we know that anything that happens in a family, whenever the child is having a kind of a disability or a special need, parent would have to undergo a series of coping skills. And most likely, if we do not have a proper support system, one will not upgrade from one coping stage to another. We have found thousands of parents settling down at the stage of shock itself. Then gradually, we have found parents moving to the stage of denial. Nothing has happened. Then maybe when you realize that something really has happened, you get into the phase of anger. And then you start bargaining with different kind of religious intervention or traditional intervention, medical intervention, blah, blah, blah. There is no end to this. And people spend years together in the stage of bargaining and shopping. And then when nothing happens, they come to a phase of depression. And then gradually might be they go into the phase of acceptance, and it may take years together to reach the stage of empowerment. And we have also found an empowered parent may, because of certain circumstances, may immediately go back to the stage of anger or denial or bargaining or whatever it is. I had a parent with whom I worked for 20 years. After 20 years of bringing this parent to the level of empowerment, and one fine day, I find this parent going into depression and bargaining and anger and back to shock again, because the family had a lot of marriages amongst the girls, which was of the same marriageable age of my child with special need, my sort of client with special need. So this is kind of a vicious cycle. Now, if you see how and this is happening, what is behind this shock, denial, anger, bargaining and all, we need to understand the factors those are affecting. Say category A of disability, intellectual disability, autism, spectrum disorder, multiple disability, mental illness, deaf blindness, cerebral palsy, severe kind. they may not be independent throughout their life. There is an element of dependency and caretaking, or kind of codependency or co-independency throughout life. This may be a big kind of a challenge for a family to take on. The second category may be a category of maybe independent if we intervene, or may do well if we intervene. However, we'll have certain limitations. Those categories may be, say, locomotor or visual impairment or hearing impairment. And there is yet a third category. And say, for example, disability, if you see the Right to Disability Act, you may come across disabilities like blood disorder, where we talk about thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, hemophilia, then chronic neurological disorders like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's and all, where the family may have an idea as to how much care and medical intervention this person might be requiring throughout his or her lifetime. So these conditions may have different implications on the family struggling to care for this child with special needs. And also further, we may have situations where we talk about associated conditions and comorbidity. Many of these disabilities may have associated conditions and comorbidity at different stages of their life, especially when you talk of intellectual disability, autism, multiple disability, deafblind population, cerebral palsy population, or other disabilities as such may end up with a lot of associated conditions and comorbid conditions throughout their life. Under such circumstances, again, the family struggle, the family dynamics may get changed. And above all of you would be aware the type of family and education of the family, the socioeconomic status of the family, the number of offsprings or children in the family, the ruralness of urban side of the family, and available services in that particular vicinity or the domain is also a critical area where we talk of the family empowerment quotient. Now, further deeper if we go, then we realize that family as a unit itself for persons with special need becomes very volatile, and their coping is always very fluctuating in nature. If you do examination in all counts of psychological domain of a family every 3 years, you will find most likely majority of them will have this up and downs because of this volatility quotient and fluctuating quotient of the whole family as a unit. Now, why this is happening again is because of the family changing family dynamics. Every family will have changing family dynamics. Today I'm in the family, tomorrow I get a job, I leave the family, there may be death in the family, there may be transfer in the family, there may be marriage in the family. So many family dynamics would be changing over every 3-4 years of time. So that is a factor. And second is the child's age and need of the child is also changing. So when you have both these two things changing all through or every 2-3 years, then most likely the volatileness of the family will be an integral part of it. Now, what we need actually to sort out these issues are very, very clear to us for a very long time. But as a country, we have not taken cognizance of this and not given enough importance to this, resulting in family struggle not coming to an end or not being relieved at all. First is early screening. Today also, if you see in comparison to a developed country vis-a-vis our country in terms of, say, identification age of a particular disability. Say I talk of autism. The average age of identification in India would be around, say, 8 years. Wherein in some of the development countries, it has gone up to, say, around 2 years or around 1 year. There is a huge difference in terms of when you talk of early screening and early diagnosis. Then comes early intervention. Very recently only this has been addressed by Government of India, and we are now massively into establishment of early intervention centers across the country by the name Cross Disability Early Intervention Center. But this dozens of centers is not going to suffice the need. Every district of this country, every block of this country would need early intervention center to support these families to reduce their struggle. And educational and rehab services, we are very well aware of. Technological support is needed, digital support is needed, inclusive society is required, and accessibility is highly necessary in all 360-degree domain if we talk of family struggle coming to an end. Now, why all these things are not happening? We may have 101 reasons to talk about, but at the core of it, when you do an analysis, why these things are not happening the way we want it to happen or the way it should have happened, is basically the overall empathy quotient in India as a country, whether it is empathy in children, empathy in adults, empathy in professionals, empathy across government servants, empathy across the whole society or different domains of the society. The overall empathy quotient would be very, very low. You might have, say, little bit better empathy towards persons with blindness, but same empathy you may not get for persons with mental illness or deaf blindness or multiple disability or autism or intellectual disability. So overall gamut of empathy is very, very poor. So unless there is empathy, we will not be able to serve the family struggle at all. Then next come attitude. I have been working in the field, so we talk of employment, we talk of inclusion, but at the ground level, when we see, we have miles to go in terms of attitude of professionals towards persons with disability, overall society towards persons with disability, the school system, the education system, the higher education system, the employer towards persons with disability, and sometimes even persons with disabilities having attitude towards other disabilities, and sometimes attitude towards themselves. All these issues needs to be addressed and taken care of, and this can happen when we touch inclusion or touch early intervention from a very beginning. And also further, in a country like us, respect to law and commitment of the society. These two are also very serious issues without which these family issues cannot be sorted out. We had survey being done for parents' struggle and parental issues. We got to know that the basic, it starts from information on the condition of the child management, where to go, how to go, who will do, interaction in terms of family, how to interact with the relatives when the child is diagnosed with disability, and then how to interact with unknown others, because they will be interacting with so many society people, and they would be questioning so many awkward questions on the child. So how to answer all these things. In terms of services also, they need support in terms of availability of service, suitability of the service, accessibility of the service, models of services that we have in our country, and also helping them with the educational plan with the child, the occupational plan for the child, and further when the child goes to adolescent age, different disability will have different aspects of sexuality education, those needs to be covered with the family. Then marriage is a very big issue to be covered for different families. Then also there are aspects in a family which we cover under, say, personal emotional domain, personal social domain of the parents, and also physical support that is required in terms of transport, in terms of maybe manpower, help, volunteer or whatever. And financial support sometimes is necessary. Family relationship is an issue that we need to deal with. We need to help them with the future planning of the child. We need to really build them enough for advocacy and self-advocacy. And also we need to also talk around the issue of hostels, short-term and long-term for persons with special need. And also it's not only the family as parent, also sibling, grandparents and others also may have similar kind of needs which needs to be addressed. For example, what is my sibling? I have been interviewing a lot of siblings. कि आपके बच्चे में actually क्या तकलीफ है, उसका जिंदगी में क्या क्या दिक्कतें हैं? Can you explain? It's difficult for them. So that also needs some kind of intervention. And how can I help in terms of other family members? Myself, my siblings and my family all can get help from myself. But who is going to tell me, train me, empower me to understand that I can become a helping hand for my special needs child and my family? So this child also will need support in terms of helping the whole family to cope with the disability, the management of the child, the inclusion movement, the education, occupation, and future plan. So nutshell, the way forward today is not moving in the direction that it should be when you talk of family struggle and family empowerment and family inclusion. It should be IFS services, individualized family support services. We talk of individualized education program, individualized training program, but we need to shift that movement to individualized family support service planning, without which we cannot succeed. Then life cycle approach to family intervention. If you look at different kind of service delivery models, whatever you know, special school, clinics, rehab clinics, residential schools, inclusive schools, so many aspects are going on. But family-centered intervention is less. So life cycle approach to family intervention needs to be built across. Family-centered policies needs to come up. So when you talk of different schemes and policies, less likely you will find focus on family-centered policies. So unless the policies are very much family-centered, the family struggle is not going to come to an end. And finally, we have a lot of human resource development program for special need, the Rehabilitation Council of India, the Nursing Council, the Medical Council, and also the Education NCT, all total combined together, we are producing maybe over 2-3 lakhs of human resources, those who would be working with persons with special need and maybe working with the families as well. Unfortunately, their curriculum also needs to change. So all those curriculum also needs to be refocusing on individualized family support programming system. So with this, I'd like to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity to be part of this very esteemed gathering and esteemed conference, and also giving my organization, National Institute for Empowerment of Persons with Visual Disability, Government of India, to be partnering this movement of Maitri College and Delhi University. Namaskar ji, thank you, dhanyawad. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, sir. It's immense pleasure. Am I audible?
Ma'am, you are not audible, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, and sorry for the inconvenience. And it's a great to listen to you always, and the way you are talking about, and it's your experience, vast experience, which is talking about the inclusive role of human being. It's not the individual, it's the overall journey is required, wherein each one from playground to school, school to family, and family to workplace, everywhere we need to churn the things so that actually we can include the people with who are differently abled. So, and for this, so many things, so many changes are required, which you have, focused over here. And the most important thing, Dr. Das, that you have wide experience wherein you have experienced people with concealed disability, you have seen people with a visible disability, and here you are focusing that we should not bifurcate. We need to, sensitize people to look into the both kind of disabilities. And most important thing is that along with it, we need to actually change the mindset, which actually is still, hampering people to include people at large. So that is wonderful, sir. And you have sponsored this conference, and this is again a great support from you. And thank you so much, Dr. Das. Over to you.
मैं एक बार फिर से डॉक्टर हिमांशु दास सर की गरिमामय उपस्थिति और उनके प्रोत्साहन के लिए उनके प्रति हार्दिक आभार प्रकट करती हूँ, और इस सत्र को आगे बढ़ाते हुए डॉक्टर स्मृति सिंह और डॉक्टर नुपुर चावला के पेपर से इसकी शुरुआत करते हैं। और डॉक्टर स्मृति मैम इंग्लिश डिपार्टमेंट में एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर हैं, और डॉक्टर नुपुर जो है वो असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर है। तो डॉक्टर स्मृति सिंह।
Good morning to all. I hope I'm audible and visible to all the online people. And I really don't know, my PPT was ready, everything was ready. But day before yesterday, something happened, which completely shattered me and changed me. And all over thing, I have to think over and I have to write my paper again. What happened? I had nothing becomes personal and political in activist life. I had one friend. She was married. She had a 16-year-old child. And she was admitted in Safdarjung Hospital. You know, she was discarded by her, abandoned by her husband. And during the, like only mother was looking after her child, like my friend. Yesterday she expired. But worst part was this, that when I went to see my friend, I was intervened and asked. He had nothing to do with her, but I was intervened and asked, why are you going to see her? Why do you need to see her? I said, I'm a human being. That's why I need to see her. And that's why I went to see her. That's it. Then I met one of my friends who was supposed to get her child treated because he got fractured in his leg. And he is hyperactive child. So one day, like she asked me, Smriti, what to do. I went to very prestigious hospital. I will not name hospital for the whatever case because of legal reasons. But very, very prestigious hospital. She went in. Doctor refused to put plaster, cast. Why? Because doctor did not know how to manage things. Now I will come to my presentation. I'm so sorry. These stories I needed to tell you because I'm not carrying my PPT. So you should not consider because I'm disabled, I have not made my PPT. Now, my paper has been, like it's survey-based paper. I have adopted, I have interviewed, went around, interview across the world. You know, I did interview through email. Of course, I could not go there most of the time, but I did interview people from email, from telephonic conversation abroad as well. Across the globe, I have interviewed people. And according to that, I have made whatever I could make. Basically, what I'm going to talk about, I am going to talk about, मैं जिस विषय में बात करना चाहती हूँ, वह विषय है कि religious belief का और या family का disabled child के या disabled adults के लिए क्या तरीका होता है, क्या एक ये होता है. There are 4 categories I have come up with in India. I'll be talking about, in between, I will be talking about worldwide theory also, and I will be, of course, adhering to time. So I won't be able to tell you much about it. You will read my paper. First category is that, like sir told, young adult living in the hostel, discarded by family, nobody wants to see them, that's it. Second, yes, बच्चा तो है फैमिली में, रखना तो है, लेकिन ठीक है, फैमिली में रह सकता है, लेकिन कोई केयर नहीं है, किसी तरीके का ध्यान नहीं है, छोड़ेंगे नहीं. We will not discard child in SIRS institution, like SIRS institution, but we will not care for the child. Our third category is where, of course, family is interested, but family doesn't know what to do, and they don't want to educate themselves also. They will be, it is others' responsibility. Like, okay, we love our child, we have all the empathy, we spend money also if needed, but child should be responsibility of others. It should not be my responsibility. Our fourth category is, and thankfully, it is increasing day by day, family who do take care of disabled children, and they do look after them. And of course, they want to be aware. And I know here many mothers have come up in the conference to listen to us, and I congratulate them. When I looked at this thing in the same way in the Middle East countries, I found, because of course it is supposed to be कि हमने कोई गुनाह किया है or I have done something wrong. It happens in the Indian context also. Let me be very honest that हमने कुछ गुनाह किया है और हम गलत हैं, इसलिए डिसेबल्ड बच्चे को दिखाना नहीं है. तो what happens? Generally they don't talk about. It is like shame for them. It is kind of not wanting. So same problem we face in the Middle East countries, what you can say. Like in India, 73% women are not married. In Middle East countries, if you go by the figure, 60% girls are not married. And when you go to West, I'll not say situation is altogether, wow, it should be like that. But yes, situation is better because of many reasons, because of society sensitization. And I believe it has something to do, whatever belief we follow in, right? We have a kind of acceptance, God's on the Lord's name of the glory of the Lord. We accept everything. So let's celebrate person to person. Let's celebrate humanism. So this is one thing we see in West, and that is why they celebrate disability. They but they have problem. They cannot for social security reason, money. They have to, if they are married to sighted people, they would be getting less money, and there are lots of other kind of problem which I'm not going in. But there is problem. What is the problem within the category also we face? Women are doubly marginalized, and it happens in caste and class. It happens with disability also. Disabled men, sorry, many men are sitting in front of me and they are a very good friend of mine. I know that, but I'm really sorry. But disabled men also don't want disabled women. They want perfect body women. And later on, they have insecurity about themselves, about their wives, about their children, and about everything. Disabled women also have like want of either perfect body or something like अगर थोड़ा सा दिख जाता तो अच्छी बात हो जाती. Criteria becomes this when they are getting married. So basically, problem lies, and they are more made mistress. You could see they are more exploited. And as you could see, there are many interventions, there are many things which has been shown in 18th century, 17th century, like brothels were run with visually challenged girls and how sexually they were exploited. I will not get into it, but there are lots of history behind it. And still, those kind of things that exist, and they are equally exploited by disabled men as they are exploited by normal society. There is no difference in that. I want to say that you have to judge people according to their capability, not according to their disability. Disability is in the mind. Capability comes when you achieve something. Disability can be overcome with the capability. Being men and women, we have to respect our own self, our own category people, and give similar respect to them instead of treating them कि वो तो ऐसे ही हैं, अच्छा वो disabled लड़की है, okay. She could be fine for everything, but she should not be, because they have myth that they cannot work in house. I wish I forgot to bring some pictures where disabled women are making chapatis, cutting vegetables and everything. Everything mostly like visually challenged women can do. Of course, there are problems with other women. Something they can do, something they cannot do. But there are many capabilities which lies beyond the household work. You also cannot do everything. Everybody is imperfect in some way or the other. So let's celebrate that imperfection and let's accept everyone. Thank you so much.
और मुझे लगता है कि जो स्मृति ने अपना अनुभव हमसे साझा किया है और पेपर में जो बात रखी है, तो आशा है कि उस पेपर से बहुत कुछ बदलने की उम्मीद है और आशा करते हैं कि उससे जो समाज की मानसिकता है उसमें कुछ बदलाव आएगा। अब अगर किसी का क्वेश्चन है, कुछ जिज्ञासा है तो आप पूछ सकते हैं स्मृति मैम से। यस, ठीक है, एक मिनट।
You can see in the chat box also.
And congratulations to you for a wonderful presentation. Short but very nice, I would say. My question is, as all of us know, that there is a lack of understanding amongst the society about the persons with disability. And it is somewhat similar also in persons with disability also somewhat have little less understanding about the society. And the gap is so huge that we cannot bridge that gap. While discussing it in conferences, seminars, etc. So what is the way forward in your opinion? How to bridge that gap?
I know.
And that social understanding needs to come from somewhere.
I know it is difficult to bridge the gap. And I know this sitting in the AC room and talking about it will not help. But I have hope from these young students who are sitting in front of me. They are the guiding torch for me. And I believe that they, like from our behavior, whatever we are doing, from them, they will take up this issue and they will talk about it. And आज हम अगर 50 लोगों की लाइफ चेंज कर रहे हैं जो यहाँ पर बैठे हैं, तो वो हो सकता है 300 लोगों की लाइफ बदले, because they will go and talk about it at their houses. They will talk to their parents. And when they will be employees, when they will be some post, they would be having this kind of experience, and that way we can change. Of course, there needs to be awareness program. Of course, there has to be public speaking at large. Like we have to go to villages, because we find in villages there, like I went to for Swachh Bharat Abhiyan to Doubly, which is very close to our college, South Delhi village. 9-year-old girl, visually challenged. Parents, family, even neighbors did not know about it, that we had disabled child at home. And then they spoke to me, then I got her admitted in the school. Like that, we disabled people have to also come forward and take in social initiative, we have to take part in. I believe that. And that's how we can change society. We have to change. Nobody will change for us. Any question in the chat box? Can you check?
तो मैम कुछ लोगों ने तारीफ किया है, वेरी इंसाइटफुल, थैंक यू सो मच स्मृति मैम, बहुत बढ़िया। और मेरी तरफ से भी आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई, आपने बहुत अच्छे ढंग से अपनी बात को रखा।
अब मैं कार्यक्रम को आगे बढ़ाते हुए डॉक्टर अरुणा ग्रोवर मैम से अनुरोध करती हूँ कि वे अपना पेपर प्रस्तुत करें। डॉक्टर अरुणा ग्रोवर मैम मैत्री कॉलेज के सोशियोलॉजी डिपार्टमेंट में असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर हैं और मैम की हमेशा इस तरह के कार्यक्रम में सक्रिय भागीदारी रहती है। और मैम का जो टाइटल है वो है डिसेबिलिटी एंड द न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी। आई इनवाइट Dr. Aruna Grover, ma'am.
सभी को मेरा नमस्कार. Very good morning. I will be talking today about disability and the new education policy of 2020 that we have. We have had some discussion on this policy since yesterday, and there have been so many discussions that I think all of them will contribute to my presentation today. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. One thing that we know that our society and our culture has been exclusionary through caste, in gender, and persons with disability also fall into this category, which has been marginalized and stigmatized and faced a lot of discrimination through the centuries. So since education system is usually a reflection of society, our education system is similarly exclusionary. How do I say this? Well, two proofs right here, institutionally available. The first, the fact that education of children with disabilities was under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment rather than the Ministry of Education. And secondly, even yesterday we had presentations where the presenters talked about what kind of legislations we have had along the way in education, right from the Kothari Commission. So I will not go into all that. What I want to emphasize is, right, even in 2010, when we had the new right to education, thank you, which universalized education as a fundamental right, this also did not apply. It was not explicitly stated that it is applicable to children with disability. So the approach to education of the disabled was based largely, unfortunately, on charity and philanthropy. Oh my God. Yeah, and we did not have the empowerment approach that came after the paradigm shift in disability studies, and once UNESCO and other global bodies they sort of came up with documents and ideas. When the West came up with these ideas of inclusion, equality, the rights approach, then India was one of the first to sign those treaties and documents. But then the point is that we have simply been signatories in a formal level, and we have not been able to implement any of that. The possibility for creating an inclusive society arises mainly through inclusive education. And it is a great thing that this new education policy that we have attempts to make education truly inclusive for the children with disabilities. Next slide, please. Now, when I talk about the provision for children with disabilities in this new education policy, the first thing that I would like to show is this, how the sites for the education of children with disabilities, according to the NEP 2020, the children with benchmark and severe disabilities can go to special schools. Those with not so severe, moderate disabilities can go to neighborhood schools, which may be private or public. And it has also allowed for this home-based education, which will be assessed, and this is equally valid as the education in the schools. Plus, of course, open schooling option from the NIOS is also available to the CWT. Next one, please. Now, the NEP 2020 envisages that we will have school complexes which will take control of, administration of, provide resource centers for all government and government-aided schools within 10 kilometers radius. There will be special educators in these school complexes and resource centers. Schools would also have barrier-free access not only to classrooms, but also to libraries, laboratories, toilets, and all children with disabilities would be enabled as per the RPDW Act of 2016. Schools and school complexes would work and be supported by providing accommodations and support mechanisms to the CWD students as is properly required. And special emphasis, the policy lays on assistive devices, appropriate technology-based tools, as well as adequate language-appropriate teaching learning materials. For example, textbooks in large print or in braille. This is already supposed to be available through the NCERT, but the policy emphasizes this should reach everybody in all areas, including arts, sports, and vocational education. Next, please. I have already talked about the resource centers. There would be home-based education, which would be assessed also by the government for efficiency and equity. Technology-based solutions are emphasized also in the NEP 2020. And like we know, the government is very proactive on disruptive technologies, transformative technologies. It also talks about, the policy also talks about Indian Sign Language and how it would be taught, and teaching learning material would be developed for this. The policy also mentions that adequate attention will be paid to the safety of the and security of the CWD. Next, please. Again, appropriate technology for learning disability students. There would be special provisions. Curricula would be made flexible, which would be a great Philip II education, not just for the CWD, but for all students. And teacher education programs, it has been emphasized, would include skills to teach children with disabilities. This is the key to the entire policy implementation. We need to strengthen our teacher education program for the disabled students. Yeah. Next one. Next slide, please. And now I move on. These were the main provisions regarding the children with disabilities, and I move on to the analysis that I want to provide for these provisions and more. Next, please. Now, the first thing that comes up is how are we going to fund all these provisions that the policy lays out? It's wonderful to see that so much will happen, but how? How much money is the government willing to invest in education, especially education of children with disabilities? Where are they going to get the money from? Provision for education in the public budget has been dropping in states at the central level over the years, and the government would need a lot of political will apart from funds to be able to actually implement this on the ground at the state level. Next one. The policy says that it is almost like a vision document. It will be implemented in a phased manner, and the complete implementation will be reached by 2040. Still, one finds that the policy is overly, may I say, overly optimistic, and does not regard the ground realities of poverty. Most of our disabled children live in poverty conditions. Almost 3/4 of them live in rural areas. How do we reach out to them? How do they cross the digital divide? How do they manage the assistive devices? Will the state provide the devices? Does the state have the funds, the logistics and everything, and the political will, like I said earlier? Secondly, most of the stakeholders in the education program, whether it is the principals or the teachers, parents, students, many of them are not familiar with assistive technologies. All of us use laptops and mobile phones. How many of us know that there are accessibility options in these devices, and how much do we know about them? Yeah, sure. The dearth of special educators. We have very few special educators. Who is going to train our teachers and students on the use of these accessibility options, the assistive devices, gadgets, and so on? Next one, please. Like Smriti Singh just mentioned, it is difficult to get the disabled children outside the family, outside the home. How do we get them to school? How do we identify them and enroll them to school? Many parents fail to see the value of education for their severely impaired children. So, parents probably don't know about the schemes, the accommodations available, what education can actually do for them, how there is reservation for the disabled, and so on and so forth. So I think there should be a component where we should have initiatives so that the school can outreach into the community and identify the disabled children and motivate parents to enroll them in a special school or in an inclusive school. Next one, please. The school complex is a rather controversial part of the NEP. What I want to mention here is that the school complex does not specify if special schools will be also included in this school complex of 10 kilometers radius. If it is included, there are problems. If it is not included, it stands isolated, it won't have resources. So many experts have expressed fears that the school complex may lower attendance and enrollment of children, of normal children, as well, so-called normal children, as well as the CWDs. Next one. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a great dearth of special educators. If every school complex is to have approximately at least one special educator, where are we going to get them all? We just don't have enough people. Yeah. Next one, please. Yeah, we're just moving. I'm just running through it. Next one, please. And this, I think, is important. What happens is, in our approach of sympathy rather than empathy, as has been pointed out, we as teachers, and I speak as a teacher, we tend to give away marks to the disabled students simply for attempting. I think it is important that we give them a lot of accommodations, but not in the assessment, except the LD cases, learning disability cases, because this would motivate our students to strive to excel. This would be a measurable indicator in quality. Other students would feel better. And most importantly, it would make them truly skilled and therefore employable. सिर्फ स्कूल पास नहीं करना है ना, कल को नौकरी भी करनी है, तो उसके लिए स्किल्स चाहिए. हम सिर्फ नंबर देते रहेंगे, पास करते रहेंगे, तो कैसे चलेगा? Next one, please. This is very difficult because the policy says we should bring the culture of inclusion in schools, but this is a very enormous and challenging project to bring inclusion into schools. Teachers don't have training, infrastructure, institutional support, peer support for inclusive education. Students face bullying, stigma, humiliation at school. It is not easy for disabled students to be in school. How to make them safe space for all students? How will the CWD feel included? It is a great opportunity, missed opportunity towards rebuilding, not just an inclusive school, but an inclusive society. The policy needs to clearly spell out, provide a proper institutionalized way how we will go about building this culture of inclusion in schools. Next one, please. Conclusion, I would want to say that the NEP is so visionary and it gives great provisions almost utopic sometimes in its approach, but the implementation remains to be seen. And policies provide the context and the infrastructure and things. Inclusivity happens through social relations. We cannot have inclusivity through documents and papers and treaties and policies. When the social relations between the CWD and all the stakeholders in school are genuine, when the equality of the CWD is not just a phrase, but an actual attitude of all stakeholders, we can hope for inclusion. Inclusion comes from positive attitude, friendship, equality, and much more. When the school is able to get the teachers and so-called normal students to relate to the CWD as rightfully equal and support them where needed, every student needs support, then we have an inclusive school. True inclusiveness comes from genuine empathy and compassion. Last slide here. One but last. I won't say my recommendation because it is too far-fetched for that. My vision is if the school could be a site, to prevent disability by providing, nutrition through the midday meal like we already have, a school health program, sports, emotional health, raise awareness about these issues. Secondly, by coordinating with larger government health system to provide treatment, prosthetic devices, surgery, etc., whatever may be needed to remove and minimize disability among students. Thirdly, most importantly, identify disability, cognitive and physical, mental health issues, as well as gifted children, talented children. And schools should be able to support all weaknesses and promote all talents so that true education should lead to the realization of our full human potential. I thank you very much. I end with a quote by the Dalai Lama. Thank you, all of you. Any questions?
Good morning, ma'am. Congratulations for a wonderful presentation. It was short, but insightful in the sense that you have summed up anything in a very short span of time that was allotted to you. Ma'am, I've got one question and one concern also. The question is, did you find any provision in a national education policy which also talks about the awareness about the persons with disabilities to the society? That is the first question. And secondly, the concern is that take a hypothetical position that if every school appoints a special educator, provides all the assistive devices, makes school complex entirely disabled friendly. Do you think that solves the problem? Because what we need is an all-round development of the students with disabilities. Say, for example, in childhood itself, children start playing, and sports is a very important part of students' development, whether it is disabled or non-disabled. Right now, when we come to special schools, sporting activities do happen every year. But if you, under the guise of inclusive education, send one or two people in each school, how do you make them play? There are several other areas also which are not possible in schools which are meant for the inclusive education, right?
I get your point. Yeah. Certainly, that is a big concern, and the policy just mentions it, and we don't have details. Hopefully, as they are saying, they will implement in a phased manner. So as we go along, probably they will give us more details. Like you said, awareness generation, I mentioned in my presentation also, that is the need of the hour, but that has not been emphasized in the policy. I hope I answered your question. Thank you. That's it. Thank you so much.
थैंक यू डॉक्टर रवीना। अब मैं सीधे दूसरी प्रेजेंटेशन पर जा रही हूँ क्योंकि समय बहुत कम है और मेरा सभी
अनीता मैडम, आप लैपटॉप का स्पीकर यूज करिए ताकि अन्य लोग भी सुन पाएंगे। ओके, थैंक यू सो मच।
अब ठीक है सर?
बेटर।
थैंक यू सर। तो मेरा अनुरोध है कि सब समय का थोड़ा सा ध्यान रखें क्योंकि हमारा एक और सत्र है, उसमें भी पेपर प्रस्तुत किए जाएंगे। तो इसलिए मेरा विशेष रूप से अनुरोध है सबसे कि थोड़ा समय का ध्यान रखें। 10 मिनट सबको दी गई है। तो अगले पेपर के लिए मैं रेशमा जोश को आमंत्रित करती हूँ। मैम दिल्ली विश्वविद्यालय के जीसस एंड मैरी कॉलेज के साइकोलॉजी डिपार्टमेंट में एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर के पद पर कार्यरत है। तो मेरा मैम से अनुरोध है कि वे आए और अपना पेपर प्रस्तुत करें।
किसको आपने इनवाइट किया है?
रेशमा जोश है, शायद ऑनलाइन अगर मैम जुड़ी हैं तो।
रेशमा जोश
अगर नहीं है तो मैं
एक सेकंड मैडम, एक बात बताओ, ये थोड़ा सा ना आप स्पीकर के पास आके बोलिए, आवाज नहीं आ रही है हम लोग। हाँ
सर, रेशमा
को हटा दीजिए, ये हटा दीजिए, ये जरूरत नहीं है। हाँ हाँ,
रेशमा जोश है।
हाँ उनको वो सबसे लास्ट में करेंगे, उनका कोई टेक्निकल समस्या आ गई है। आप नेक्स्ट को बुला दीजिए।
ठीक है, तो नेक्स्ट हमारे चंदन कुमार जी हैं जो कि पाटलिपुत्र विश्वविद्यालय पटना से है।
हाँ।
और मैं सर को आमंत्रित करती हूँ कि वे अपना पेपर प्रस्तुत करें।
चंदन कुमार जी भी नहीं दिख रहे हैं।
सर अगले पेपर पर जाएं।
हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
अगले हमारे एकता कुशवाहा हैं जो शोधार्थी हैं, समाजशास्त्र विभाग से, महात्मा गांधी काशी विद्यापीठ से हैं, वाराणसी से। तो मैं एकता से अनुरोध करती हूँ कि वे अपना पेपर प्रस्तुत करें।
एकता जी, हमने आपको को होस्ट बना दिया है, आप अपने आप को अनम्यूट कीजिए और वीडियो ऑन करके अपना पेपर प्रेजेंट करिए। थैंक यू सो मच एकता जी।
यस सर।
आप अपना वीडियो ऑन करिए ताकि हम पिन कर दें, यहाँ दर्शक भी देख पाएंगे आपको।
ओके सर।
हाँ।
एक सेकंड सर।
कोई इशू नहीं, कोई इशू जी। थैंक यू सो मच एकता जी।
जी
जी जी, बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। आभासी मंच से हम आपका स्वागत करते हैं और आप अपने शोध पत्र को, एक अनुरोध यह भी है, हम लोग हमारा समय बहुत पीछे चल रहा है, तो आप लोग ना थोड़ा शीघ्रता से अपने पत्र को प्रस्तुत करें। धन्यवाद।
ओके सर। यहाँ उपस्थित सभी विद्वत गणों को मेरा नमस्कार। मैं एकता कुशवाहा, शोध छात्रा, महात्मा गांधी काशी विद्यापीठ वाराणसी। मेरा शोध पत्र का विषय है भारत के दिव्यांग विभूतियों का व्यापक सामाजिक समायोजन। भारत के दिव्यांग विभूतियों का व्यापक सामाजिक समायोजन। मुख्य शब्द इसके हैं दिव्यांग, प्रतिभावान, योगदान, विकलांग, समशील। आदिकाल से ही दिव्यांग व्यक्तियों ने समाज के लिए व्यापक योगदान दिया है। यह योगदान अनेकों नेक अवसरों पर इतना मूल्यवान रहा है कि सामान्य व्यक्ति यह सोचने को मजबूर हो जाता है कि ये लोग वास्तव में दिव्यांग थे या नहीं। निश्चय ही जब हम दीर्घतमा के वैदिक ऋचाएं एवं अष्टावक्र का अष्टावक्र गीता तथा सूरदास के पद पढ़ते हैं तो इन महाकवियों की विकलांगता रूप में संबोधन करना भूलकर दिव्यांगता शब्द से ही संबोधित करने का मन करता है। उस समय यह कतई याद नहीं रहता है कि ये विभूतियां विकलांग थी। विकलांग को दिव्यांग कहना अति विशिष्ट विचार है। वास्तव में जिस मानव को भगवान किसी अंग से वंचित कर इस धरा पर भेजते हैं वे मानव दिव्य ही होते हैं, जो विलक्षण प्रतिभा से कुछ कर गुजरते हैं। पुराणों, इतिहासों और आधुनिक समाज में ऐसे अनेकों विभूति हुए हैं जो विकलांग थे पर किसी न किसी खास अंगों के कारण दिव्यांग सिद्ध हुए। अनेक विद्वान, अनेक विदुषी इस धरा पर एक अंग न होते हुए भी किसी खास अंग के माध्यम से अपनी अमिट छाप छोड़ चुके हैं। दिव्यांग शरीर वाले शारीरिक रूप से कमजोर होते हैं, लेकिन ज्ञान, बुद्धि, तर्क शक्ति और तेजस्विता के मामले में किसी से भी कम नहीं होते, जिसका उदाहरण पुराण तथा इतिहासों में उल्लिखित है। इस संदर्भ में भारत की अनेक महान दिव्यांग विभूतियां हैं, जिन्होंने समाज में व्यापक योगदान दिया है। प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने कहा है कि जब किसी को विकलांग कहकर परिचय कराया जाता है तो नजर उस अंग पर जाती है जो काम नहीं करता, जबकि असलियत यह है कि विकलांग के पास भी ऐसी शक्ति होती है जो आम लोगों के पास नहीं होती। इनके पास दिव्य विशेषता होती है। इनके अंदर जो विशेष शक्ति है वह उसे मैं दिव्यांग के रूप में देखता हूँ। असल विकलांग तो वह है जो शारीरिक रूप से संपूर्ण होते हुए भी कर्म के बिना लूला लंगड़ा, ज्ञान के बिना अंधा, प्रेम के बिना हृदय विहीन और बुद्धि के बिना निष्क्रिय होता है। प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी द्वारा उनमें दिव्य विशेषता देखकर दिव्यांग जैसे शब्द से उन्हें सुशोभित करना अति प्रशंसनीय है। जिस प्रकार आकाश से गिरा हुआ जल किसी न किसी रास्ते से होकर सागर में पहुंच ही जाता है, उसी प्रकार दिव्यांग नाम से अभिहित करना उन सबके सम्मान में इजाफा ही है। जिस प्रकार दिव्यांगता एक विश्वव्यापी समस्या है और हर काल की गंभीर समस्याओं में से एक है, उसी प्रकार दिव्यांग विभूतियां भी हर काल में पैदा हुई और विश्व के हर भाग में उन्होंने अपनी असाधारण प्रतिभा का परिचय दिया। सामान्य व्यक्ति जिस जिस विधा में उत्कृष्ट प्रदर्शन कर सकता है, विकलांग व्यक्तियों ने भी हर उन विधाओं में न सिर्फ सामान्य व्यक्तियों के बराबर वरन कई बार उनसे बेहतर प्रदर्शन कर दिखाया। सर्वप्रथम श्री गणेश जी से प्रारंभ करते हैं, जिनका जन्म भगवान शिव की अनुपस्थिति में हुआ था। जब शिव जी आए तो गणेश ने उनका रास्ता रोका। अपने ही पुत्र को न पहचान कर उन्होंने उसका सर धड़ से अलग कर दिया। बाद में सत्य का ज्ञान होने पर उन्होंने पुत्र के धड़ पर हाथी के बच्चे का सिर लगाया। कृत्रिम अंग धारण करने पर श्री गणेश जी की क्षमता में कोई कम नहीं आई। न हेलो हेलो
जी एकता जी, हम लोग आपको सुन पा रहे हैं, आप जारी रखें।
ओके। वे विद्वान होने के साथ शक्तिशाली भी थे। बाद में महर्षि परशुराम के साथ युद्ध में उनका एक दांत भी टूट गया, पर उनकी महिमा कम नहीं हुई। भारी भरकम शरीर वाले गणेश जी को चूहे की सवारी मिली। जब सभी देवताओं में प्रतियोगिता हुई कि प्रथम पूज्य देव कौन होगा, तो कुशाग्र बुद्धि गणेश ने अपने माता पिता की परिक्रमा अल्प समय में करके यह स्थान पाया, जबकि अन्य हष्ट पुष्ट देवता तीव्र वाहनों में संसार का चक्कर लगाते रहे। द्वितीय उदाहरण सूर्य के सारथी अरुण जी की है। अरुण की माता ने उसे नियत समय के पूर्व ही जन्म दे दिया, फलतः अरुण की जांघों से नीचे के अंग विकसित ही नहीं हुए। अरुण ने हिम्मत हारने के बजाय घोर तपस्या की, तो उसके दृढ़ निश्चय से प्रभावित होकर सूर्यदेव ने उसे अपना सारथी बना लिया। आज हम अपने जीवन के सभी कार्यों में ऊर्जा का स्रोत इस्तेमाल करते हैं। इसके प्रमुख स्रोत सौर ऊर्जा के पीछे एक दिव्यांग व्यक्तित्व का निरंतर और असाधारण योगदान था। तृतीय उदाहरण प्राचीन काल में दीर्घतमा ऋषि ने नेत्रहीनता के बावजूद वेद की तमाम ऋचाएं लिखी। नेत्रहीनता के बावजूद वेद की सुंदर ऋचाओं के रचयिता दीर्घतमा का जन्म अनुमानों के अनुसार विश्वामित्र के काल के 300 वर्ष पश्चात अर्थात आज से 6700 वर्ष पूर्व हुआ था। वे अंगिरस कुल के वंशज थे। उनके कुल का अथर्व अंगिरस भी कहा जाता है। उनके एक पूर्वज अथर्वा ऋषि थे, जिनका नाम अथर्वेश से जोड़ा जाता है। अथर्वा वैशाली राज्य के कुलगुरु थे और वशिष्ठों के वंश में जन्मे थे। वे इस बात के लिए भी प्रसिद्ध थे कि उन्होंने एक भृगु वंशज ऋषि के साथ मिलकर 2 अरणियों अर्थात लकड़ी के दो खास तौर से बनाए गए डंडों का परस्पर घिसकर उनमें से आग निकालने की नई विधि को विकसित की थी। अथर्वा ऋषि के एक पुत्र थे जिनका नाम उसिच था। उसिच ने 3 पुत्रों को जन्म दिया। उनके नाम से उच्चस्थ, बृहस्पति और संवट। ज्येष्ठ पुत्र उच्चस्थ का विवाह भृगुकुल की कन्या ममता से हुआ था। ममता अपने पति से बहुत प्रेम करती थी। जब वह गर्भवती थी तब उच्चस्थ का अचानक निधन हो गया। अभागी ममता ने एक पुत्र को जन्म दिया। जन्म देने के पश्चात जब यह जाना कि उसके पुत्र की आंखें ज्योतिहीन है, तो वह भरी भारी हृदय से बोल पड़ी, समझ से भरा जीवन कैसे बिताएगा मेरे लाल, कैसे बिताएगा। अंधेरे से भरे जीवन के लंबे लंबे वर्ष। जब आश्रम में सभी ने ममता के हृदय विदारक वाणी सुनी तो उनकी आंखों में आंसू भर आए। तभी सभी लोग उस बालक को दीर्घतमा कहने लगे। दीर्घतमा गौर वर्ण, भव्य एवं सुंदर शरीर वाले थे। उनकी आंखें बड़ी बड़ी, सुंदर और आकर्षक, पर ज्योतिहीन थी। अपने जन्म की दास्तान सुनकर दीर्घतमा बालपन में ही मानसिक रूप से वयस्क हो गए। सुंदर तो थे ही, विद्वत्ता भी उन्हें फूट फूट कर भरी हुई थी। उन दिनों ऋषि पद प्राप्त करने के लिए कठिन परीक्षा का आयोजन होता था। विद्वानों की सभा बैठती थी, कोई महान ऋषि उसकी अध्यक्षता करता था। ऋषि पद के प्रार्थी विरचित मंत्रों का पाठ करते थे। विद्वत मंडली उस पर चर्चा करती थी। इस प्रक्रिया को ज्ञान सत्र कहते थे। दीर्घतमा ने अल्प आयु में ही एक ज्ञान सत्र में भाग लिया। उन्होंने बड़े आत्मविश्वास से अपने स्वरचित मंत्र का पाठ किया। इंद्रम मित्रम वरुण मग्निमाहु अथो दिव्याशा सुपर्णो गुरुत्मान एकम शद विप्रा बहुधा वदंती इंद्र यमम मातरिश्वानमा। उपस्थित विद्वानों ने इस ऋचा की बुरी बुरी प्रशंसा की। अनेक ने इस मंत्र को गायत्री मंत्र के बाद श्रेष्ठ रचना बताया। इस मंत्र की एक पंक्ति एकम शब्द विप्रा बहुधा वदंती, अर्थात सत्य तो एक ही है। विद्वान लोग इसको अलग अलग बहुत प्रकार से बताते हैं। आज तक लोकप्रिय है। ज्ञान सत्र की अध्यक्षता कर रहे विद्वान ऋषि भी इस प्रज्ञा चक्षु कवि और मंत्र रचयिता से प्रभावित हुए बगैर नहीं रह सके, और उसी ज्ञान सत्र में दीर्घतमा को ऋषि पद प्राप्त हो गया। दीर्घतमा के महादार्शनिक सूक्त में 52 मंत्र है। यह विराटकाय सूक्त अपनी दार्शनिकता के कारण वैदिक परंपरा में अपने मंत्र के पहले 2 शब्द अश्यवामस्य के आधार पर अश्यवामी सूक्त के नाम से मशहूर हो चुका है। इस सूक्त में एक महाकाव्य है, एक शब्द विप्रा बहुधा वदंती। ऋग्वेद में वर्णित यह महाकाव्य एक सत्य है जिसे विद्वान लोग अनेक प्रकार से कहते हैं, जो कालांतर में जैन दर्शन के अनेकांतवाद का आधार बना। उसी सूक्त में सांख्य दर्शन के प्रकृति और पुरुष संबंधी सिद्धांत का बीज मंत्र संख्या 1.64.20 में छिपा हुआ माना जाता है। इसे कठोपनिषद में भी उद्धृत किया गया है। इसी में कल्पनाशील दीर्घतमा कहते हैं कि सुंदर पंखों वाले 2 पक्षी एक पेड़ की एक ही डाल पर साथ साथ बैठे हैं। उनमें से एक पक्षी एक पेड़ के एक फल को खा रहा है और दूसरा बस केवल उस फल को निहार भर रहा है और उसे प्राप्त करने की उसकी कोई इच्छा नहीं। द्वसुपर्णा सयुजा शखाया स्नानम वृक्षम परिशस्य जाते त्योरन्यः पिप्पलम स्वादु अति अनशनन्यो अविचाक शीते। यदि इस पूरे सूत्र को पढ़ा जाए तो इसके दार्शनिक पहलू।
जी, मेरा अनुरोध है कि आप निष्कर्ष रूप में प्रस्तुत कर दीजिए, समय हो गया है।
ओके मैम, चतुर्थ उदाहरण जो है कहोड़ के पुत्र अष्टावक्र जी का है। पंचम उदाहरण स्वामी विरजानंद का जन्म 1769 में हुआ, इनका है, जो कि दृष्टि बाधित थे। और षष्ठम उदाहरण सूरदास जी का है। और सप्तम उदाहरण मलिक मोहम्मद जायशी जी का है, जिनका जन्म जो है 1492 में हुआ था। और अष्टम उदाहरण जो है मूर्तिकार विनोद बिहारी मुखोपाध्याय जी का है, जो कि एक भित्ति चित्र भी बना रखे थे। नवम उदाहरण डॉक्टर रघुवंश जी का है, जो कि दोनों हाथ जन्म से ही इनके नहीं थे। और दसम उदाहरण जो है 80 दिव्यांगता के शिकार हुए मुरलीधर देवीदास आपटे जी का है। और 11वां उदाहरण नेत्रहीन विद्वान श्री गिरिधर मिश्र, जो राम भद्राचार्य के नाम से विख्यात है। मैं निष्कर्ष पढ़ दूं?
जी,
हेलो
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, हाँ
जी। कुल मिलाकर के यह साबित हो चुका है कि नेत्रहीनता, श्रवणहीनता, मूकता, अस्थि विकलांगता अलग अलग या मिलकर मनुष्य को जितना आगे बढ़ाने से रोकने का प्रयास करती है, उतना ही मनुष्य अपनी इच्छा शक्ति से औसत गति से कहीं ज्यादा तेज आगे बढ़ने लगता है। इसलिए दुनिया के हर देश में विकलांग प्रतिभाओं ने अनेक व्यक्तित्व व कृतित्व से समाज को चमत्कृत किया है। मैम हो चुका है, आप कहें तो जो विश्व के और भी हैं उनका भी मैं बोलूं या फिर?
धन्यवाद
जी, थैंक यू सर।
अब मैं अगले शोध पत्र के लिए रचना नारायण को आमंत्रित करती हूँ। वो हमारे यहाँ आई हुई है, उपस्थित है, तो कृपया आप अपना शोध पत्र प्रस्तुत करें। रचना रिसर्चर है और डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पॉलिटिकल साइंस, यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ दिल्ली से है।
ये वाला करना है रचना मैडम?
जी सर,
आपका पीपीटी यही है ना?
Yes, sir. Yes.
ओके।
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachna Narayan, and I am a research scholar in University of Delhi from Political Science Department. So today I am presenting a paper which is on portrayal of disability in Bollywood.
Oh, it's not working.
So my research topic is portrayal of disability in Bollywood. Next. Okay. So the next slide, please. Okay, next one. Next one, please. So basically in this paper, what I'll be doing, what I've done is I have shown how Bollywood have depicted disability in many different ways. Initially, they have depicted Bollywood disability as just a stereotype, used it as a comic character, as an evil, as social misadjustment, and also as social stereotype. So first I'll define what, next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I'll define what is disability. So according to PWD Act of 1995, 7 conditions of disabilities have been mentioned. There were blindness, low vision, leprosy cured, hearing impairment, locomotor disability, mental retardation, and mental illness. But later in RPWD Act 2016, 7 conditions were increased to 21 conditions, and which included many multiple disabilities. Next slide, please. So the depiction of disability on screens. So on screens, on TVs, or in movies, or also in television serials, disabilities have been shown as punishment, as comic element, as heroism, as evil, and as pity. Next, please. I'll start with showing how disability have been shown as a punishment in Bollywood. In a movie called Jeevan Nyay, next slide, please. In a movie called Jeevan Nyay, a man who basically discarded his wife because she belonged to a background from dancers, was basically at the end, he was crippled, and this was shown how if you have done something wrong to the society, the punishment by the God or even by the society is you would be dissevered. In Netriken, in a movie called Netriken, which is a Tamil movie, again, a person who have done something wrong to the society was basically, by the end, he was blinded. And again, it showed how disability have been shown as a punishment to the society. Next slide, please. One of the favorite movies of all Indians is Sholay. And Sholay also, at the end, you would see how the Thakur, who is the protagonist there, who he basically crippled the villain, that is Gabbar, and showing how that disability would be a bigger punishment than just killing that villain. Next, please. Now I will show how disability have been used as a comic element. In a movie called Golmaal, you have seen how a protagonist who is lucky is basically have some disability, and it has been not shown as with proper sensitivity and reality. He was basically, so he basically used his voice, his strengths voices to impress a girl. And this shows that person who have disability cannot basically impress a girl through just with his conditions. In movies called next please. Next slide, please. In other movies like Mujhse Shaadi Karogi, in Crazy 4, in Pyare Mohan, and Tom, Dick and Harry, all these movies showed how disability has been used just to bring a comic element, to bring a light element to the movies, and just discard the basic sensitivity of disability. Next, please. In the next element is the disability as heroism. In the movies like Kabil or Dushman, it has been shown that persons with disability had some special sixth senses power. In movie Dushman, Sanjay Dutt was basically a blind veteran, and it was shown that just through his sixth senses, how he dealt with the. Okay. Next, please. Now, disability have been shown as evil in the characters like in Bahubali, in Wali, and in Ram Tera Desh. It has been shown how a disabled person is basically an evil person. In Bahubali, it's been evident that the father of the villain was basically crippled, and he has been shown as a evil person. Next, please. And movies like Khamosh, Koshish, and Shor showed how the person with disability was shown as a pity that he could not live an independent life, and which go against the concept of living independently, which has been a world movement for the persons with disabilities. But there is a new wave of Indian cinema which has bring about sensitivity in the movies. The movies like Tare Zameen Pe, Black, Barfi, Margarita with a Straw, Guzaris, Hichki, and Zuban has showed how disabilities can be used as a social awareness for educating people and telling people about how what kind of disabilities, the realities of the persons with disabilities, and how they deal with their real life. Next, please. I would conclude by saying that the new age of Indian cinema have romanticized the disability character. The movies are written with persons with disabilities as central theme. And the portrayal of sensitivity and positivity in Indian cinema towards disability have increased, but still there is a very long way to go. Next, please. Yeah, just thank you so much.
थैंक यू। हम लोग प्रतिभागियों से निवेदन करते हैं कि अपने प्रश्न को चैट बॉक्स में लिखें और सबसे लास्ट में लेंगे। और एक गुजारिश यह भी है, मुझे लगता है अनीता मैम, ये रश्मि सरोहा, आपने इनको बुलाया था?
सर, इनका मैसेज है, ये नेक्स्ट सत्र में आएंगे।
अच्छा, नेक्स्ट सत्र, ओके। और चंदन जी भी दिख रहे हैं हमें, एकता जी का हो गया, अब चंदन जी को आप बुला सकते हैं। चंदन
जी सर, जी सर। तो मैं आमंत्रित करती हूँ चंदन जी को कि वो अपना शोध पत्र प्रस्तुत करें। सर ऑनलाइन है?
हाँ, ऑनलाइन जुड़े हुए हैं चंदन जी। डॉक्टर चंदन जी, आप पाटलिपुत्र विश्वविद्यालय से हैं। इनका विषय भारत में विकलांगों की स्थिति एवं पुनर्वास के उपाय। चंदन जी, अगर आप हमें सुन पा रहे हैं तो आप अपना शोध पत्र पढ़ें। और जब तक चंदन जी हमसे जुड़ते हैं, उसी क्रम में हम लोग आगे बढ़ जाते हैं। डॉक्टर कुमुद रानी गर्ग है, ऑफलाइन मौजूद होंगी वहां पे। डॉक्टर कुमुद रानी गर्ग। और एक निवेदन मैं करना चाहूंगा, डॉक्टर कुमुद रानी गर्ग, आप ऑर्गेनाइजिंग कमेटी के पार्ट हैं, आपसे तो हम फिर भी आगे भी सुनते रहेंगे, तो आप अपना सिर्फ निष्कर्ष सार रूप में पढ़ें, मैक्सिमम 2 से 3 मिनट। थैंक यू सो मच।
मेरा टॉपिक है गुरु राम भद्राचार्य जी का साहित्य जगत को
कुमुद मैडम, माइक हटा दीजिए, आप लैपटॉप के स्पीकर का प्रयोग करें ताकि जो आभासी मंच से हैं वो अभी सुन पाए अच्छे ढंग से। हाँ, ठीक है, ठीक है।
थोड़ा सा आगे।
हाँ,
हेलो सर, सुन पा रहे हैं?
जी जी बिल्कुल, बहुत अच्छे से, थैंक यू सो मच।
गुरु राम भद्राचार्य जी की बात अभी एकता जी ने की। गुरु राम भद्राचार्य जी का जन्म 14 जनवरी 1950 को हुआ और उन्होंने अपनी मेधा शक्ति के, जहां तक उनकी बात है कि वो प्रज्ञाचक्षु, ये बात हो चुकी है, और उन्होंने अपनी मेधा शक्ति के बल पर हिंदी और संस्कृत के लगभग 80 ग्रंथ 80 रचनाएं की हैं, जिनके अंतर्गत उन्होंने भारत की ज्वलंत समस्याओं, राष्ट्रीय समस्याओं, सामाजिक समस्याओं, किस तरीके से भारत पुनः विश्व गुरु के पद पर स्थापित हो सकता है, आदि चिंतनशील विचारों को, सिद्धांतों को, आदर्शों को, मानवीय मूल्यों को प्रतिपादित किया है। उनके मैं कुछ प्रमुख बिंदुओं को उनकी रचनाओं से संबंधित रखना चाहूंगी, क्योंकि मुझे ब्रीफली बोलने के लिए कहा गया है। तो साहित्य दृष्टि से, साहित्यिक दृष्टि से यदि देखें तो मैं बता ही चुकी हूँ कि उन्होंने लगभग 80 ग्रंथों की हिंदी और संस्कृत में रचना की है। ये संस्कृत और हिंदी के साथ साथ मैथिली और अवधी भाषा के जानकार रहे हैं। इनकी रचनाओं में इन्होंने महाकाव्य, खंड काव्य, स्रोत काव्य, पत्र काव्य, शतक काव्य, भाष्य आदि सम्मिलित किए हैं, जिसके अंतर्गत उनकी कुछ साहित्यगत विशेषताएं हैं, जैसे कि प्रमुख रस, जो काव्य, महाकाव्य और नाटकों में प्रमुख रूप से 8 रस बताए गए हैं, उसके अतिरिक्त इन्होंने शांत रस, भक्ति रस, प्रेम रस और वात्सल्य रस के साथ साथ 12 रसों का अपनी रचनाओं में प्रयोग किया है। छंद की बात करें तो लगभग 33 छंदों का इन्होंने प्रयोग किया है, जिनमें विशेष रूप से मैं बताना चाहूंगी कि एकाक्षरी श्लोक का इन्होंने प्रयोग किया है, जिसके अंदर एक अक्षर के द्वारा पूरी श्लोक रचना की जाती है। और यदि अलंकारों की बात की जाए तो अनुप्रास इन्हें अत्यधिक प्रिय। इसके अतिरिक्त इन्होंने उपमा, रूपक, उत्प्रेक्षा, यमक, निदर्शना इत्यादि अलंकारों का प्रमुख रूप से प्रयोग किया है। इस तरीके से इनकी भाषागत भाव पक्ष के साथ साथ कला पक्ष भी दर्शनीय है। और छंद के बारे में तो मैं बता ही चुकी हूँ। इन्होंने यदि गुण की बात की जाए तो ओज, प्रसाद, माधुर्य सभी गुणों का समावेश किया है। और पांचाली और गौड़ी तथा वैदर्भी रीति का प्रमुख रूप से प्रयोग किया है। यदि सामाजिक दृष्टि से देखा जाए तो इन्होंने सामाजिक अन्याय के प्रति, समाज में जो व्याप्त सामाजिक अन्याय है उसके प्रति उसका विरोध करते हुए उनकी उस समाज की कुरीतियों और कुप्रथाओं के प्रति अपना विरोध प्रदर्शित करते हुए।
कुमुद मैडम आप निष्कर्ष पढ़ें प्लीज। निष्कर्ष आपने बहुत बढ़िया पत्र लिखा है, मैंने उसको पूरा देखा है। बस मैं आपसे गुजारिश करूंगा कि आप सिर्फ लास्ट में क्या बताना चाहते हैं, बस वो बोलो।
तो इसका सार यही है कि इन्होंने न केवल साहित्यिक दृष्टि से अपितु सामाजिक, राजनीतिक, सांस्कृतिक, मनोवैज्ञानिक, दार्शनिक तथा धार्मिक सभी पक्षों को शामिल किया है अपने रचनाओं में। और उनके अंतर्गत इन्होंने सभी पक्षों को समावेशित करते हुए साथ साथ इनकी रचनाओं का प्रभाव इस बात से भी द्योतित होता है कि सभी अनेक विश्वविद्यालयों तथा महाविद्यालयों में इनकी रचनाओं को पाठ्यक्रम के रूप में रखा गया। जैसे संपूर्णानंद संस्कृत विश्वविद्यालय में इनका राघव अभ्युदयम नामक नाटक, एकांकी नाटक रखा गया है शास्त्रीय परीक्षा में। प्रस्थानत्रयी नामक आचार्य की पाठ्यक्रम में रखा गया है। और इस प्रकार से इन्होंने अतुलनीय और अमूल्य योगदान साहित्य जगत को दिया है, जिसके लिए साहित्य जगत उनका हमेशा ऋणी रहेगा।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कुमुद रानी गर्ग जी। डॉक्टर कुमुद रानी गर्ग, आप मैत्रेय में संस्कृत पढ़ाती हैं। अब अनीता मैडम, मैं आपसे अनुरोध करूंगा, वहाँ जो विराजमान एक प्रतिभागी हैं उनका शोध पत्र वाचन करा के यहाँ पे हम ब्रेक लेंगे। अगला सत्र हमारा बड़ा हो जाएगा क्योंकि अगले सत्र के जो अध्यक्षता करने वाले हैं मेजर रंजन मुखर्जी सर, वो आ चुके हैं। बीच में हमें ब्रेक भी लेना है 10 मिनट का। तो सबसे गुजारिश करूंगा, हमारी तरफ से जो विलंब हुआ उसके लिए क्षमा प्रार्थी हूँ। साथ ही आप लोग बने रहना, अगले सत्र में हम जरूर वहीं से क्रम से ही शोध पत्र वाचन कराएंगे। थैंक यू सो मच। ओवर टू यू
सर हस्तक्षेप के लिए क्षमा प्रार्थी हूँ।
हाँ जी चंदन जी।
सर मेरा पत्र वाचन कब होगा सर?
चंदन जी आप तो हमारे घर के हैं, काहे टेंशन ले रहे हैं? आपका दूसरे सत्र में करा देंगे।
निश्चित तौर पर सर, निश्चित तौर पर। आभार आपका।
जी जी जी। हाँ क्या नाम से अनीता मैडम, आप उनको बुला लें जो वहाँ पे ऑफलाइन मौजूद है।
धन्यवाद प्रमोद सर। अब मैं अपने अगले शोध प्रस्तुतकर्ता एन रमेश कुमार और जो कि शोध पत्र लिखा है डॉक्टर एस बाला सुंदरी ने, और जो सर हैं वो स्कूल ऑफ इंग्लिश एंड फॉरेन लैंग्वेज द गांधीग्राम रूरल इंस्टीट्यूट तमिलनाडु से हैं। सर को आमंत्रित कर रही हूँ। स्वागत है सर आपका। सर प्लीज आप 10 मिनट में आप अपना शोध पत्र।
What is the limit time? 5 minutes? 10. Okay. Thank you. Good morning. I am Ramesh Kumar from Gandhigram Rural Institute, deemed to be University, Tamil Nadu. I am a PhD research scholar. I am doing in disability literature. My topic is resistance and identity formation in Schanberger's Laughing at My Nightmare. Schanberger is an American. He is a blogger and a YouTuber. And he is affected by SMA, spinal muscular atrophy, the rare disease which affects the skin. He is a wheelchair user. He is not able to speak, walk, and he is totally affected, actually. And he has written his memoir, The Laughing at My Nightmare, in which he discusses many things, many challenges he faces in the society, in the able society. Okay, let's discuss it. This article sets out to explain how Schanberger registers his resistance and battles against discrimination and finds a space to form his identity despite his disability. Berger is a 20+ young adult. He lives in Minneapolis in USA. He was born with a rare disease called a spinal muscular atrophy, which hinders his muscles growth. As a result, his muscles have gotten smaller and weaker instead of growing stronger and bigger. This does not stop him from doing the things he enjoys. He is a person with a wicked sense of humor and strong mind, though weak in the body. He is friendly, funny, and approachable. He runs a blog and a non-profit organization dedicated to providing medical equipment to people with muscular atrophy diseases. Okay? Berger takes all efforts to get identified as same as his friends. He is very much concerned about being treated as one of the fellow human beings in the mainstream community. He wants to look like same as others because he is obsessed with making more friends. He fears that he may be neglected for he is bound in wheelchair. His fear of not making friends is a universal one. However, in his mind, his wheelchair and disease would be the unfair cause of never making friends. To combat this imagined scenario, he spends a fair amount of time obsessing about how kids would perceive him. He plans to buy cool clothing as other kids wear. He thinks that by wearing the same clothes as them, we'll have an easier time seeing him as their equal. He is forced to do what others in order to be accepted, equal, and same. He wants to follow social parameters set by the able society. He is compelled to let his hair grow long and believes that having a long hair will obviously a sign to people that he is normal. Tom Shakespeare says, and nobody wants to be categorized in a way which seems limiting or negative. They want to stress their similarity to others, not their differences. What they can, not what they cannot do. Okay, this is what Tom Shakespeare says. In American culture, having girlfriend even at the 5th grade is a parameter set by the able society to be considered normal as others. He attempts winning a girl's heart and leaves no stone unturned to accomplish his mission at 5th grade. It is generally assumed that people who are wheelchair bound will be socially inept. He tries all his ways possible, break the misconception about disability and proves himself. Berger observes, kids in wheelchair don't get girlfriends very easily. This would be a big step in proving to the world that I was different. Okay? It's quite obvious that normal person will have many friends. It is quite obvious that normal person will have more friends. Burga, to prove the world that he is not different, devises novel plans to make as many friends as possible. He rehearses potential conversation in his mind and practices asking for help in cool ways that doesn't sound pathetic or annoying. Let me have a sip. Let me have a sip. I'll close it in a couple of minutes. Okay. And Shan Burga is very careful about not evoking pity in the minds of non-disabled people. Okay. So he pays attention to each and every word to provoke humor to make others see him as a normal person forgetting his disability. In order to appear as a normal people, actually he evokes humor, he provokes humor to hide his disability. Okay, this I just need, he says, people who are born with an impairment often develop a great communication skill or have a good sense of humor as an adaptive response, he says. Okay, to be considered normal in the society, in the biggest concern for Burga since his childhood, during his primary schools, there is a parade. Okay, it is raining in the morning of Halloween parade. Burga is an electric wheelchair user. It will short circuit. It will short circuit and explode if it is exposed to rain for long. In spite of the danger on the card, he is determined to participate in the parade without worrying about the rain and the results. But he says, there is a misconception among the people that disabled people are inept and lack social skills. Burga wants to make people aware that he is not either of these things. He breaks up the stigma and sets up a milestone in all his activities. Be it giving a speech like in a seminar or contesting in an election or drinking alcohol, he makes his presence visible and remarkable in the crowd. Okay, it's last. Okay. The last, see, in the American society, actually people, whether irrespective of the grade, whether it is 5th grade or 6th grade or 12th grade or college grade, they have to drink, they have to get a girlfriend, they have to be in a sexual affair. So one of the most important thing is to be a normal human being in the world is to have the ability to have sex. He addresses, it is stereotyped that the disabled people cannot perform well in sex. But Burga breaks the stereotypes about the disabled people into pieces by winning a girl's heart, of course, not her body, okay, and involved in a mutual sex. Actually, Tobin Siebers, in his book Disability Theory, says one of the chief stereotypes oppressing disabled people is the myth that they don't experience sexual feelings or they do not have or want to have sex. In short, they do not have a sexual culture. Okay, there is a universal belief belief among the people that sex is the privileged domain of ability. Okay, ability. Please. Just I'll conclude. Okay, actually the full paper is available. You can read it. Okay, I'll just conclude. Actually, Shan Burga knows it very well that the only way to save himself from the unjust stereotypes and social prejudices is through awakening his mind. It is clear that the unjust stereotypes and social prejudices force him to comply with the codes of the ableist society. He risked his life to resist the conventional thoughts about disability and thus creates his identity to convince the world that he is normal as others. Thank you.
धन्यवाद सर। अब मैं समीक्षा के लिए डॉक्टर शेफाली को आमंत्रित करती हूँ। डॉक्टर शेफाली।
डॉक्टर शेफाली, आपसे अनुरोध है कि आप सारगर्भित समीक्षा पेश कीजिए ताकि हम लोग 10 मिनट का ब्रेक भी ले पाए, अगर आप चाहती हैं तो।
Thank you, Anika ji. Good morning to all of you. So I would like to start with Smriti's presentation, our very first presentation, where she has talked about the stigma which is attached with the notion of the disability, right? She has talked about her 2 friends' stories, and that story was very heart-touching. And she has also, talked about the 4 categories faced by the disabled person, and she has also explained how the how the women's having a disability faced many problems and many disregard and unfair treatment given by the society. Now, our second presentation done by Aruna Grover. She has talked about position of children treated in schools and by the society, as she mentioned that they viewed as an object of charity, pity and sympathy. But after the interference of Ministry of Education and introduction of new education policy 2020, this paradigm has been shifted and a new view has been presented, and there is a need that disabled person to be viewed as an active subject of capable of attaining great heights. So Aruna ji, you have done justice with the topic and you have explained that how far the inclusion of various provision of the view of new education policy are in practice and how far they can likely to be achieved. Our next presentation was given by Ekta Kushwaha ji. She has explained about भारत के दिव्यांग विभूतियों का व्यापक सामाजिक योगदान, जिसके लिए आपने पुराण और इतिहास से जुड़े व्यक्तियों के बारे में उदाहरण दिया, जैसे सूरदास जी हैं, सुधा चंद्रन जी हैं, मुरलीधर हैं. आपने इनके विषय में बहुत खूबसूरती से उदाहरण प्रस्तुत किए और आपने गणेश जी के बारे में भी बात करके अपने विचारों को बहुत सुंदरता से प्रकट किया है. उसके बाद कुमुद रानी जी, जो हमारे ही विश्वविद्यालय में असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर हैं संस्कृत डिपार्टमेंट में, उन्होंने गुरु रामभद्र जी का साहित्य को लेकर बहुत अच्छी बात हमें बताई है, उनके योगदान का उल्लेख किया है. उन्होंने बताया है कि सूरदास जी नेत्रहीन थे, लेकिन इस नेत्रहीनता के पश्चात भी उन्होंने मेधा शक्ति के बल पर संस्कृत और हिंदी के लगभग 80 से अधिक ग्रंथों की रचना करने में सफलता प्राप्त की है. उसके बाद रचना जी has presented her views on portrayal of disability in Bollywood. So you have explained how Bollywood showed disabled person's character as comic, as in evil, social, soulless punishment and pity. But in some other movies, it is shown as a social awareness also. You have also given example of various movies to support your views on disability. And last presentation is given by N. Ramesh Kumar. So sir has presented his views on Shane Bako, who is a famous YouTuber and blogger, and he is, the Shane Bako is running his own non-profit organization that aids people with disabilities. Sir has portrayed the vivid picture of his life, his personal life, and he also, talked about the person with the disability is they have to deal with the pain and suffering and mental agonies in the name of medical treatment. Your paper tells about how a person with disability create opportunity and space for self. So this is my opinion about the paper presented in this session. And all the papers are very interesting and related to the subject area, and all the papers are different and having a interesting conversation. And in the last, I would like to thank Dr. Pramod, who has given me opportunity to be a part of this conference. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैडम. अनीता मैडम, मैं आपको बीच बीच में रोक दे रहा हूँ, क्षमा चाहूंगा. अभी चैट बॉक्स में कुछ प्रश्न आए हुए हैं, तो अगर आप उनको लेना चाहें तो ले सकते हैं। चैट बॉक्स में 1-2 प्रश्न हैं, उन्हें जरूर ले लीजिए।
पहला प्रश्न है, हाउ वुड यू लुक एट द बायोपिक्स लाइक चंपा कैट इज द heroism
आप
about
लैपटॉप के पास से पढ़ो मैम, लैपटॉप के पास से।
how would you look at the biopics like Chapak at it is earnest about its social message, but cinematically could not manage to rise above. As you have discussed about the new wave of Indian cinema, is it really able to bring a significant change of ground level? This question is for the presentation on the portrayal of disability in Indian cinema. सर ये शायद एन रमेश कुमार जी से प्रश्न है। सर आपसे एक सवाल है, सर को यहीं बुला लीजिए ना। टाइटल तो इनका सर का सिनेमा पे किसका है? सिनेमा पे किसका टाइटल? अच्छा, वो तो है नहीं यहाँ पे। रश्मि तो मैम चली गई, यहाँ पे है नहीं। रचना चली गई, हाँ चली गई है सर। वो अभी शोध प्रस्तुतकर्ता पेपर जिन्होंने प्रेजेंट किया था वो अभी यहाँ नहीं है इस समय।
कोई इशू नहीं, मैं आपको आपका उत्तर अवश्य प्रदान करवा दूंगा। उनके पास आपका प्रश्न भेज दिया जाएगा और जो उत्तर देती हैं आप तक पहुंचा दिया जाएगा। प्रतिमा सिंह जी।
सर एक प्रतिभागी का प्रश्न है, वो ले सकते हैं हम इस समय?
हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
Good morning, ma'am. My question is to Rachna, ma'am.
इनको मंच पे बुलाइए, मंच पे आके पूछे, ताकि जो आभासी मंच से जुड़े हैं सर भी हैं वो देख पाएंगे।
सर इनका प्रश्न रचना मैम से ही है, वो है
सर इनका प्रश्न भी रचना मैम से ही है और वो है नहीं यहाँ पे।
बात नहीं।
सर अब हम अपना ये सत्र खत्म करें, आपकी आज्ञा हो।
अगर ये स्मृति मैडम है यहाँ पे?
सर मैम तो नहीं है, बाहर।
मैम नहीं है। तेजेंद्र जी से बोलिए वोट ऑफ थैंक्स, हिमांशु सर को वोट ऑफ थैंक्स प्रस्तुत करें।
ठीक है सर।
हाँ, और अगर तेजेंद्र जी उपलब्ध ना हो तो मैं भी ये काम कर सकता हूँ, आप मुझे भी कर सकते हैं। हाँ
मैं कर देती हूँ।
हाँ बिल्कुल।
मैं अब सबसे पहले तो धन्यवाद करती हूँ डॉक्टर शेफाली मैम का, जिन्होंने बहुत ही सारगर्भित समीक्षा यहाँ प्रस्तुत की। और सत्र के अंत में मैं एक बार फिर से डॉक्टर हिमांशु दास सर जी का और सभी शोध प्रस्तुतकर्ताओं का, प्रतिभागियों का, छात्राओं का धन्यवाद करती हूँ कि आप सब ने आकर इस सत्र को सफल बनाया। और अब हम अगले सत्र में मिलते हैं 10 मिनट के बाद। आप सबका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
जी जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। धन्यवाद। ज्ञापन के क्रम में एक निवेदन यह भी है, सभी प्रतिभागी जो ऑनलाइन मोड से जुड़े हुए हैं वो अपने आप को अपना वीडियो ऑन कर ले, ताकि हमारी तकनीकी समिति इन अनमोल पलों को अपने कैमरे में कैद कर पाए। और दूसरा निवेदन हिमांशु सर से मुख्य रूप से है कि वो अपना आशीर्वचन हमें अवश्य प्रदान करें अंत में। हिमांशु सर, अगर आप विराजमान हैं और हमें सुन पा रहे हैं तो हमारा निवेदन अवश्य स्वीकार करें। जी, सभी लोग अपना वीडियो ऑन कर लें।
मुझे सर आपसे
हाँ
मोदी सर आपसे निवेदन है कि आप है ना आस्था जायसवाल को एक बार पोस्ट बना देंगे तो सबको वीडियो पे यहाँ दिखा सकते हैं।
किसको?
आस्था जायसवाल।
अच्छा, आस्था जायसवाल, ओके। आस्था जायसवाल वीडियो अपना ऑन करें। आस्था जायसवाल का वीडियो ऑन नहीं है, मैं इनको को होस्ट बना रहा हूँ, एक सेकंड। ठीक है। जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आप सभी का। यह सत्र यही समाप्त होता है। अब हम लोग 5 मिनट का ब्रेक लेंगे, 5 के 7 मिनट, 11:40 से अगला सत्र शुरू होगा। तब तक आप लोग कहीं जाएंगे नहीं, चाय वगैरह पीजिए। अगर मैत्रेयी में है तो मैत्रेयी में भी एक व्यवस्था है, और अगर अपने घर पे है तो वहां भी जरूर बना करके 10 मिनट में चाय नाश्ता तो कर ही सकते हैं। पुनः हम लोग 10 मिनट बाद अर्थात 11:40 में मिलेंगे। आप सभी को नमस्कार, धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद।